An easy tank of the rock side we're going to build up to double Hydra and pivot out into the balloon. The opponent sends out Charizard, probably thinking we're going to Icy Wind bait him. Well, there's no bait on this channel and the opponent's about to get nuked. So, welcome back to the home of Shadow Pokemon. We did recently get, well I say recently, the last Rocket event did see the release of Shadow Drifloon. I've seen a few people show Shadow Drifblim in the Open Ultra League. 0 people have used Shadow Drifblim. So here we are. Today we're going to be repping Swampert and Ninetales core with the pivot of the balloon. And let me tell you, both Drifblim and Alolan Ninetales are very expensive to build, but my god are they both worth it. You don't need to take my word for it, you can just watch the video. Without any further ado, let's get into the battles. And in game 1 we lead Shadow Swampert into Gliscor. The opponent attempts to catch a Hydro Cannon on their Jelicent. They're unsuccessful. We go straight for the Earthquake. The opponent commits the shield, and behind energy I don't really have a response for this Jelicent, so I'm just going to stay in. The opponent can throw the Shadow Ball. Swampert would survive. We actually just get hit with a Surf. We now continue to overfarm. I am going to shield the second Surf, and then I'm able to throw one Mud Shot and the second Earthquake. This is either going to huge damage or force the final shield. Either way, I'm pretty happy. The opponent choosing to double shield. I am going to commit to the next Earthquake, not allowing the opponent to build up any extra energy. Surf takes us out. We can now come in to the balloon, and this is now time for the balloon to shine. The opponent is going to reach the Shadow Ball on CMP. Drifblim denies all of that energy. Shadow Ball returns Jelicent to their Pokeball. They did exit with a Night Slash. We pivot into Ninetales, catching the resisted damage. Drifblim has a pretty good matchup against Gliscor because we can hit him for double super effective with the Icy Wind. The final Pokemon is Cobalion, and we're going straight for the Gleam. Gleam does almost 60% of their HP. The opponent going to be throwing a charge move. They need to throw the Stone Edge to take me out, and that's exactly what the opponent does. We come back into the balloon. The opponent is going to be able to reach one more Stone Edge. I am going to commit a shield here, as this will be the hardest hitting move in the game. The opponent recognising that goes for the very sneaky bait. However, no bait is going to save this opponent. We throw the Icy Wind on the CMP, even resisted. That does secure the knockout. Gliscor is going to throw the Night Slash. That won't knock out. However, Gliscor, if you don't know about the power of Shadow Drifblim, you're about to find out. Double super effective Icy Wind is going to be all she wrote. GG's and thanks for playing. In the next battle, lead Shadow Swampert into Skuntank. The opponent pivots out into Granbull. I don't have an immediate response, so I'm going to fire off the Hydro Cannon, looking for early shield advantage, and I'm going to pivot out into the balloon. These charms are tearing us apart. I am going to return the shield on the Crunch, as that would definitely knock out. Crunch doesn't debuff us, and I'm going straight for the kill shot. Shadow Ball with Stab going to be more than enough to take care of the Granbull. If Skuntank does return, they're not going to be able to resist it. Poison Jab farm us down, so the balloon is going to be super annoying. We fire off the Icy Wind, lowering their attack. The opponent needs to throw energy. We'll make one more, and the opponent chooses to go for the safer play. Crunch will be taking us out. We can now re-enter into Swampert. The opponent is around 3 away. I think we're 3 away as well, so this should be CMP to the charge move, and it is exactly that. Swampert with the higher attack wins the CMP tie. The opponent commits that final shield. Our Ninetales would take a ridiculous amount of poison jab damage, so I'm also going to match shields. The opponent pivots out into Trevadent, and here comes Ninetales. We do easily tank one move. The opponent going to full send the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball does do huge damage. Despite our Ninetales being heavily excelled, we farm up towards the back-to-back moves. One Weather Ball going to take care of the Trevadent, and when Skuntank does return, this Weather Ball is also going to be enough for the knockout. Let's fucking go. Moving on to the next one. Niantic obviously feeling sorry for me after playing my sets drunk at the weekend on a stag do, giving me 3 good leads in a row, which is pretty unheard of. We lead Swampert into Nidoqueen. The opponent answers with Cresselia. We look to chip him with a Hydro Cannon. I'm going to fire off the next Hydro Cannon as well. I'm going to attempt to catch a Grass Knot on my balloon. Let's see if the opponent throws it immediately. We farm up. The opponent holds their energy, but either way, Drifblim pretty thick. The opponent can throw whatever they like. We do survive the Moonblast. The opponent can even throw another one. However, they do not. We reach the Shadow Ball. I'm not sure Icy Wind would knock out. I just powered up this balloon and went straight into battle. So go for the safer play. If they do return with the Nidoqueen, it's going to be a really tough farm down. The opponent, obviously realising they can't resist it, Poison Jab us down, send out their last Pokemon, which is Obstagoon. They might be a Dark type. We might be a Ghost. However, Drifblim going to be really annoying in this matchup. The opponent fires off the Night Slash. That isn't enough to knock out Drifblim, running out of HP, but it still makes the second Icy Wind. My Drifblim's actually 2 power-ups short. of its limit because I'm a scrub and I don't have enough for the XLs. However, you could see if we would have been fully XL'd, I would have actually made another Icy Wind Drifblim, an absolute monster. This heavily debuffed Obstagoon choosing to stay in, which is pretty questionable. The opponent looking to debuff us. As soon as I see the switch, I'm going to switch out into Swampert. The opponent continues to stay in. So we fire off the Weather Ball. The opponent putting all their faith into Nidoqueen. I am going to allow this next charge move to go through and instantly switch. The opponent allows me to Mud Shot down. Mr. Opponent, what are you doing? These battles are around 2700 ELO. So I've got no idea why the opponent's playing like this. No disrespect to anyone, but that was pretty poor. We allow the Earth Power to go through. I didn't want to shield up a Poison Fang as Ninetales with 2 shields will easily be able to clean up this battle. The opponent double shields both of the Hydro Cannons. We get Poison Jab farm down. Ninetales is going to be able to come in. We can just shield up whatever they throw. Shadow Ninetales hits pretty hard and this Weather Ball is going to be pretty much enough to knock out. And we win a pretty questionable game despite the opponent playing like somewhat of a potato. Normal service has resumed. The absolute worst case scenario lead. We pivot into the Balloon. Also a losing matchup. The opponent attempts to catch an Icy Wind on the Tapu Fini. And I'm not falling for that. I full send the Shadow Ball and Shadow Ball does huge damage. The opponent gonna have to throw a charge move. They throw the charge move just before we get to the next Shadow Ball. I've got no intention of shielding up my Balloon. Surf takes us out. We're now going to come into Swampert. Attempt to overfarm. And then we're going to put it all on Ninetales. Hoping Ninetales can close strong. The opponent gonna fire off the Surf. Surf won't be enough to knock out. I've got no intention of shielding up Swampert. I'm going to continue to overfarm. I realise at this point I should have overfarmed somewhat more, so I actually go for the undercharge, allowing me to get some more energy. We get one extra Mud Shot and I pivot out into Ninetales. The opponent's final Pokemon is Charizard, and this is now the bait game. In theory, we've been hard countered throughout the battle. However, you already know that opponents love to bait Shadow Pokemon. I dare the opponent to Blast Burn me, and just like that, win confound. The opponent goes for the Dragon Claw. We shrug it off. We're going to fire off the next Weather Ball. I go for an undercharge in case the opponent chose not to shield. The opponent going to fire off another Dragon Claw. Again, I'm not shielding shit. Dragon Claw does absolutely nothing. We now Powder Snow farm them all the way down. Ninetales running out of HP. The opponent, you can see, super tilted. They YOLO the Shadow Ball out of frustration. We've got 2 shields. We shield up. We're at the back-to-back Weather Balls. The first one draws the shield, and the second one is going to be all she wrote. GG's, and thanks for playing. Shadow Ninetales take a bow. Moving on to the next battle. I thought the last lead was bad, but this one's objectively worse. Let's see if we're able to play our way out of this one. The opponent builds up to an Energy Ball, and they're not baiting. That does massive damage. Then I'll pivot out into Tapu Fini, so things are looking pretty dreadful. I go straight for the Gleam and the opponent shields it up. That is going to allow them now to water gun us all the way down. I'm just going to use Swampert as a damage sponge, as is a Drifblim feature, and hope Drifblim can pull off an absolute miracle. The opponent fires off the first Surf. They're already at the second. Swampert, thanks buddy, you contributed a lot. We actually do survive that, so we got Drifblim with 2 shields and a sack swap versus the world. I am going to need to start shielding up something. I am going to shield up the next Surf. I'm going to continue to overfarm. I am going to fire off the Shadow Ball. As I approach 100 energy, Shadow Ball will be enough to knock out. However, that Abomasnow is going to be a huge problem. Abomasnow, especially the regular one, is pretty thick. I'm just going to go for the debuffing move of the neutral Icy Wind, hoping I can somehow survive a Weather Ball. The opponent does shield it up. You can see just the Powder Snows have got us deep into the yellow. I am going to commit this shield. I'm going to see how much a Shadow Ball does to Abomasnow. I continue to throw at disciplined timing. However, Shadow Ball isn't enough to knock out, and the opponent's already at the next charge move. And unfortunately, we get absolutely wrecked. GG's to that opponent. Let's see if we can bounce back. Good lead. Let's see if we can somehow maintain alignment. The opponent pivots out into Wall Rain, and I don't really have an immediate response. I'm going to look to tank one move on Swampert. I'm going to YOLO the Earthquake. Most Wall Rain do commit a shield, but we don't like to bait around here. I full send the Earthquake. The opponent doesn't respect it. I look to catch the Weather Ball on my Ninetales, and unfortunately, I'm unsuccessful. However, Ninetales can tank the Earthquake. Earthquake does a lot of damage. I'm going to continue to overfarm. I'm going to look to throw the Weather Ball on CMP to the next Icicle Sphere. This is double resisted, and Wall Rain actually survives. That is brutal. So I am going to have to CMP to the next Earthquake. This time, this will knock out the opponent. Commits that shield, wanting to flip switch. However, I'm not going to allow that to happen. I am going to shield up the Earthquake. I then can look to Powder Snow, farm them down. I am deep in the red. I attempted to commit to the Dazzling Gleam. We won't get there, so I do have to settle for a Weather Ball. That does do some solid chip damage. I pivot out into Swampert. The opponent switches out into Virizion, and I'm super quick in my response to Drifblim. Icy Wind is super effective, and that should allow us to survive a Stone Edge. I've got no intention of shielding up this balloon whatsoever. The opponent goes for the Leaf Blade, and that does absolutely nothing. It looks like the opponent has Leaf Blade and Sacred Sword. They're not even building up to the Stone Edge now. I'm going to continue to overfarm. I am going to fire off the Icy Wind on CMP. I go for an undercharge. However, it still secures the knockout. Back out comes Skunk Tank. And this again is where Drifblim's super annoying. Despite us being a ghost and the opponent being a dark type, Drifblim is pretty good here. And we managed to hex farm down. Moving on to the next one. We see Cobalion or Cobalion, whatever you like to call it, in the lead. Not bad for our Swampert. However, it's not the worst matchup for them either. They easily survive a Hydro Cannon. With that in mind, I'm going to YOLO the Quake. The question is, does the opponent respect the damage? Sadly, they do, so I pivot out into Drifblim. This could be a Stone Edge, but I never really shield my Safe Switch, especially when I bring it in. The opponent goes for the bait, and that isn't the best bait, as it did absolutely nothing. The opponent now switches out into Gliscor. Again, pretty questionable. We land the Icy Wind. They near get one shot. I can easily tank this Night Slash. I am now going to have to hex farm them all the way down, and Drifblim going on an absolute rampage. If Cobalion does return, they definitely need to Stone Edge. The opponent sends out Jelicent, and again, I'm not baiting. I'm going straight for the Shadow Ball. The opponent commits that shield. If they try and hex farm me down, we're going to make another one. This Jelicent is now unshielded. If you're wondering just how hard Drifblim hits, the answer is like an absolute trot. They near get one shot. I send out Ninetales. The opponent pivots out into Cobalion. They're now using the hidden move of invisibility, hoping that saves them despite being down 2 shields. On a more serious note, fucking hell, this glitch is so annoying. We land the Hydro Cannon. We then Mudshot down. Jelicent has a boatload of energy. I'm just going to leave it all up to Ninetales. The opponent takes us out with a Surf. And obviously for science, you're going to see Ninetales pretty thick. They fire off the Shadow Ball. We shrug it off and we get the resisted Powder Snow farm down, despite having the most annoying glitch in the world. Moving on to the next one. Dreadful lead Swampert into Dragonite. The opponent pivots out into Galarian Stunfisk to answer our balloon Safe Switch. We land the Icy Wind, which will allow us to tank a Rock Slide. And this is going to be a real test of how good the balloon is. The opponent going to fire off one more Rock Slide. We will survive, and we're not in danger of getting Mudshot farm down. So I'm going to try and incline the opponent not to shield. We go straight for the Shadow Ball, hoping the opponent doesn't. They near get one shot, and this is going to now allow me to shield this move up. We're going to be able to hex, farm them down, and just like that, Drifblim takes back switch from Galarian Stunfisk. Unfortunately, I'm on 1 HP. The opponent snipes with a Dragon Breath. However, we've got the perfect response lurking in the back. The opponent going to fire off the superpower. Easy no shield for me. I anticipate the switch, so I send out Swampert. And there's the Registeel, Dragonite, Double Steel, pretty common. Obviously, I did run a Triple Shadow version of this team. We do tank one Focus Blast. The opponent has 2 shields. However, you already know I'm still YOLOing the Quake. The opponent shields that up. We are going to be able to outpace to the second Earthquake. Is the opponent willing to double shield, or are they now going to call the bait? Swampert lands the Earthquake. Get fucking wrecked. We obviously are going to allow this to go down. We're going to be able to Powder Snow down the Reggie. We could actually throw the double Weather Ball. However, it's just easier to Powder Snow farm down, and we somehow win that game. Let's go. Moving on to the next one. Swampert into Stunfisk, a pretty good lead. The opponent Safe Switch into Pidgeot on our answer with Ninetales. The opponent lets this go. If they actually throw the Brave Bird here, they could possibly wing attack farm me down, so I'm going to commit a shield. It is the bird. This is somewhat problematic because I am now down shields. However, Ninetales can put on some damage against this Stunfisk. It's all going to be about how much the opponent overfarms. We fire off the first Weather Ball. I attempt to CMP to the next move. The opponent's continuing to overfarm. I think it's a smart play on their part as they want to threaten an Earthquake against the Swampert. The opponent farms up too much and we actually CMP tie him when we don't mean to, but I'll absolutely take that. We force a shield. The issue here is Rock Slide isn't actually going to knock out. They then are going to be able to Mud Shot, farm me down. I don't want to give up Switch, so the opponent does leave with an Earthquake. I send out Swampert. We do tank one in the Ultra League. They're unlikely to bait as I'm already down one shield. They land the Earthquake. I'm going to continue to overfarm. This is just a Rock Slide. It's an easy tank for Swampert. Unlike the Great League, Rock Slide does absolutely nothing. I bank 2 Hydros, pivot out into the Balloon, and the opponent's final Pokemon is Charizard. They know we've got a heap of energy. I'm going straight for the Shadow Ball. If they don't know about Drifblim's damage output, they just found out that does huge damage. We can now Hex farm them all the way down, and that is all she wrote. GG's. In the next game, we lead the GOAT, Shadow Swampert, into another GOAT. We get some kind of weird desync. I believe we're even on energies. I've done 5 Mud Shots. I think I'm now at 6. The opponent fires off the Hydro Cannon. I'm full sending the Earthquake. Earthquake does one shot with the Mud Shots. Does the opponent respect it? They actually catch on Giratina. Great catch from the opponent. They probably thought they're catching a Hydro, but I like to YOLO nukes. We can now answer this Giratina Say-Such with our Ninetales. They land the Ancient Power. I'm not going to be able to farm down before the next one, so I over-farm slightly. Fire off the Weather Ball. Weather Ball secures the knockout. When Swampert does return, we are going to get off a Weather Ball for some chip damage. This is now going to put them into Hydro Cannon range, so I don't even need to go for the Earthquake. The opponent smartly over-farms. They fire off the Hydro Cannon. I am going to take my 2 shields. Looking at the health on this Swampert, as I am a Shadow Swampert user, we're super glassy. I'm actually going to try a very ambitious 1 shield and Hex farm down. The opponent going to be spamming out Hydro Cannon after Hydro Cannon. I'm going to shield the first. I am going to have to tank the second, which the opponent reaches here. Unless the opponent pivots after this, they are going to get farmed down. Let's see what the opponent's final Pokemon. I'm looking top right. It's Charizard. And again, we're YOLOing it. Does the opponent respect it? They do not. They near get 1 shot. And that is all she wrote. Drifblim again closing strong. Neutral lead Swampert into Scrafty. To be honest, Drifblim pretty much better than any other Ghost in this matchup as we triple resist counter and we continuously debuff them with an Icy when we land the Hydro. The opponent is at the foul play. I dare the opponent to foul play me, and this opponent actually does, which makes me pretty sad. However, either way, Swampert is going to force a shield or secure a knockout with the Hydro Cannon. We draw that shield and we pivot out into Ninetales. The opponent stays in. They attempt to catch a Weather Ball on Jelicent. We don't throw. However, we do throw at pretty terrible time in allowing the opponent a full free Hex. I didn't account for the 1-turn switch. Hashtag I'm a noob. Even a Shadow Ball from this range won't take me out. We're going to put it all on Drifblim. The opponent full sends a Shadow Ball. I'm going to commit to the Gleam, trying to force the opponent to throw. The opponent does throw. We're just going to allow Ninetales to go down. I'm going to wait out my full timer, giving Drifblim a 3rd shield in the form of Swampert. We wait out the timer, in comes the Balloon. Switch timer does pop up, stay in school. Kids learn to count, it's only 4 hexes to the next Shadow Ball, and we do catch. Did we catch the Shadow Ball? Yes, we did. If the opponent stays in, we will be able to Hex farm them all the way down. They switch back out into Scrafty, so I'm going to throw the Icy Wind secures the knockout. They can't come back into Jelicent, they're going to be forced to show their final Pokemon. What is that final Pokemon? They send back out Jelicent. We commit to the Hex farm. Now, this is only a Surf, but I am going to shield it up, keeping Drifblim super healthy. The opponent's final Pokemon is Cresselia, and we go straight for the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball does huge damage to one of the bulkiest Pokemon in the league. I am now just going to go for the Icy Wind. This is one of the rare times where you will see me bait, because what else are they going to shield? They absolutely have to shield something. And now I'm going to call the bait. Nice bait, trainer. This game is now absolutely over. And the opponent concedes the match. Moving on to the next one. Swampert into Kofagrigus. Speaking of baits, I think almost all Kofagrigus throw the Dark Pulse. So with that in mind, I'm going to attempt to catch an Alolan Ninetales. We land the Hydro, we pivot out. Did we catch? Yes, we did, but what did we catch? It's a Dark Pulse. You love to see it. The opponent now sends out Skunk Tank. Skunk Tank isn't going to appreciate the Gleam. They allow me to get to it. And the question is, does the opponent respect the damage? They do not. Get absolutely wrecked. Back out comes Kofagrigus looking for the farm down, and they get it. I imagine the opponent's final Pokemon is Pidgeot. However, we've got 2 pretty healthy Pokemon. We come into Swampert. I am going to throw on CMP. This should force a shield off the opponent, which it does. I am going to match shields. We would survive a Dark Pulse, but I don't want to get Wing Attack farm down if it is a Pidgeot. And is it Pidgeot? The opponent actually has Tapu Fini. They attempt to catch a Hydro. I hold my energy. I'm going to go straight for the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball, you've already seen the video, does huge damage. The opponent actually shields the first. The smart play from the opponent would be to full send the Moonblast. Come on, trainer, what do you throw? They throw a Surf. That is going to mean they're going to have to throw another, and this should be game over. We're going to allow Drifblim to go down. I can come into Swampert. Swampert can overfarm ever so slightly. Earthquake is going to be returning this stupid fairy to its Pokeball. Get wrecked. When Kofa does return, we are going to be able to outpace to the Hydro Cannon, and that is going to be game over. GG's, and thanks for playing. All three Pokemon putting in work. Moving on to the final battle of the video, we see their mirror lead. You already know I'm going to full send the Earthquake. The opponent also builds up to the Earthquake. We lose CMP. I doubt the opponent Earthquakes me. Let's find out. It's just a Hydro Cannon. We do survive. Surely the opponent thinks this is only a Hydro Cannon. Well, surprise. Get wrecked, trainer. Let's see what the opponent brings in. They bring in Dragon Breath Guillotine. I instantly pivot out into Ninetales, and we're drawn out Charizard. Drifblim now looking primed to sweep. I fire off the Weather Ball. The opponent lets it go. They build up to what could be a Blast Burn. They actually overfarm, allow me to get to another Weather Ball. This should force a shield, which it does. The opponent's got a boatload of energy. They farm up so much energy, they actually CMP time me. Come on, trainer, throw the Blast Burn. It's just a Dragon Claw. The opponent now going to be forced to double shield. They've actually conceded the match. GG's, and thanks for playing. Very, very strange plays, but we're going to take that. So you can see throughout this video, Shadow Drifblim is now an absolute top meta threat. It is very expensive, but I think unlike a lot of the other ghosts, like Trevadent and Jelicent, it does provide some niche matchups. Scrafty, the counters are triple resisted, and you can actually win that going straight Icy Wind. Also, Pidgeot, pretty common. I'm not entirely sure I even saw a Pidgeot when I run this thing, which is pretty typical, but Icy Wind is going to be hitting back for super effective. So if you have the resources and a Drifloon without frustration, I think Shadow Drifblim's pretty good in this meta. I'd like to say a huge thank you to everyone for almost getting me to 5k. I think that's pretty unbelievable, considering I talk a lot of rubbish and I shoutcast exclusively on my phone. I'm ever grateful. But if you're new, consider subscribing, like the content if you're enjoying it, of course. If you like your battles featured on my channel, link to the battle solution form is down below, and I will see you all in the next one.